Hello and welcome to another video tutorial for ya from me here at Inking on the Fly. My name is Amy Jasper. Thanks for joining me. So we have a fancy crisscross card, pocket card, whatever you want to call it. I've designed this one a little bit different. It has a little stand on the back so that it can stand up. Because I always like when I can put cards on display, so I assume that other people would like that as well. So this is what we get to make today. Woohoo! All right, let's get started. Okay, if you got a kit from me, then you have quite a few things going on right now. You've got our card base is going to be these two pieces of cardstock to start with. So these are it's basically a full sheet of cardstock. Each piece is 11 inches long and 4 1/4 inches wide. I scored them in the middle at 5 1/2 inches. And then you can see that I trimmed off those corner edges. So basically what I did to do that was I put those pieces, the two 11-inch pieces together, and I put it in my paper trimmer so that it would line up and I could cut from the score line in the middle to the bottom corner of the cardstock. So it's cut on an angle. So that way it's cut exactly in half. And by doing both at the same time, if you're able to do that, then you know that they're going to be exactly the same. It doesn't really matter if they're not the same because they're going to cross over in the front like this. So if one's a little bit different than the other, it will only be off by a little bit anyways. So you can do most of our paper trimmers, you only want to do one piece of paper at a time anyways. So then you can just do one at a time. So yeah, so you're cutting from that score line in the middle. Ooh, show you in the picture. Score line in the middle to the corner of both pieces. Now one of those pieces, in order to make that little stand at the back that I showed you, the stand here, it looks like a little shark fin or a tail. On one of your pieces, there's an extra score line. So that one, you're going to score that at the halfway point between, so that will be the back of our card. So that's going to score at 2 3/4. So just to recap, you have two pieces of cardstock that will be 4 1/4 by 11 inches. One piece you will score at 2 3/4 and at 5 1/2. The second piece you only need to score at 5 1/2. And then from that 5 1/2 section, you will cut that diagonal on both pieces. Okay. So to put these together, first we're going to trim the back of that extra score line piece. So that piece you're basically going to cut at an angle. So I think I did mine about, what did I do? Maybe I better grab it to see measurements. I know measurements make things easier for everyone, right? So that one's about 1/2 inch. So you can mark 1/2 inch from the bottom of your cardstock, like that. And you're going to cut at an angle from the base of your cards, from your score line, sorry, that 2 3/4 inch score line, you're going to cut on the diagonal. So it's going to look, let me get my ruler, where's my ruler? There we go. So it's going to look, I will draw a line. So it's going to look like that. So that's your first cut, and you'll get rid of this section. And then your next cut is going to cut from the top fold to meet up with that line. Or alternatively, you could just cut to that corner. It doesn't really matter. Either way. So if we cut from this corner to this corner, then it would look kind of like that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut mine. So this, we will be getting rid of that section. So I'm going to go ahead and cut mine in my itty bitty baby paper trimmer. And it's not an exact thing, this part, obviously. It's kind of willy-nilly. Basically, what you want is to have that kind of back of a picture frame feel. If you wanted to, you could even trim off excess. You don't have to have it at a point at the end, but it's going to then, if this was my tabletop, this line right here, it will allow the photo, the card to stand at an angle on your table, on a mantle or wherever. So then you can go ahead and fold that because it will be easier to fold now than later. And that part's ready to go. Okay, so then we need to put these pieces together. So we're going to glue them together so that they are, whoops, like so. So like a pyramid with the top cut off. But we only want to put adhesive in this section. We don't want any glue here. And it's helpful if you fold this side over, because when we glue these together, we want to make sure that we aren't too far over that fold so that the card will close nicely. If we go ahead and glue that down and line it all up just perfectly, then it's not going to want to fold very well. So we want to, it's nice if you can have it ready, and then when you glue it together, then you can test it out and make sure it's going to glue together. And of course, that's where my liquid glue comes in, because I can move things into position or out of position if it's too close to that fold. So put adhesive on that 2 3/4 by 4 1/4 section, and then lay this other half down there to match, line it up, make sure it's all tidy and lined up. If you're cutting or my cutting, if you have a kit, if it's not equal, so you might have a little nibbly bit poking up the top, you can just trim that off. Mine happens to be good, so. Then we can fold the other side over and get an idea of our shape, how things are coming along here. So this is your base point for this card design. That's your crisscross fold card. Okay, the next thing that we want to do before we carry on with that is you're going to want to have a piece of designer series paper. And in this case, I'm using the gorgeous, beautiful, stunning, perfect Expressions in Ink specialty designer series paper. So you can see it has these beautiful veins of gold foil on the one side, and the other side has just the kind of, I guess it's sort of like an alcohol ink technique, perhaps. That's what it looks like to me. So very, very pretty. We are going to cut this piece on a diagonal. So pay attention to this back side, because the angle that you cut it is going to determine where you want to make sure that you have a big chunk of color on your wider part of your diagonal cut. If I cut it this way, my big chunk is here. If I cut it this way, my big chunk is there. And that will determine, like if you look at, I'm probably making this more complicated than it needs to be, but if you look at this card, I have the piece that's crossing over top has a large amount of the color pattern on this part of the paper. Whereas another one I did, if I can reach it, this one, I ended up crossing it the other way. So this is the piece that didn't have the gold on it. That's under here, and it's tucked underneath. So they're different. I don't know if you can see what I'm talking about, but this is the piece with the gold foil on it. It's tucked underneath this piece, and this piece is the gold foil, but it's over top. So it just depends how you want to lay it out. I do kind of like that white bit showing, and you can have it laid out either way. It doesn't really matter too much which direction, what fold is on top. Doesn't really matter too much. So do whichever way works with the paper when you cut it is kind of what I'm getting at here. Okay, I don't think I can fit this in my trimmer. No, I cannot. So I have to trim this in my bigger paper trimmer. So if you're using a piece of paper that is very directionally focused, then you want to make sure you're cutting it the right way. So if I want this section to be on this side, then I want to cut it at this angle. But if I want it this way, if I want this bit to be on this side, then you're going to see it'll be much less color showing, right? So those are things to think of when you're cutting your paper and when you're making more of these in the future. This side doesn't matter too much because no matter which angle I cut, I have quite a bit of colorful paper on both sides. So it's more this side where you have a vacant area on the side. So it just depends where you want your colorful side to be on. And I want mine to be on the right, because that's how I did my first card, and I thought that looked really nice. So if I want the bottom right of my diagonal to have lots of color, then I want to make sure that I'm cutting it this way. See? You have to think about it. I want to cut it this way, and then this section will be on the bottom. Because if I have it this way and I cut it on that section, then I have almost no color showing. Well, a little bit down there. So I'm going to cut it this way. I hope that's helpful. I feel like I've muddled through that a little bit, that explanation. Okay, so I want to cut that way. So I'm going to go like that. Good. I didn't pay attention to that when I actually did my class, and I think that's important to take note of, especially if you have paper that has a directional pattern and you want the direction to go a certain way. Okay, when you have corners, it's good to not cut into the corner. It's better to actually start in the middle and then cut. If you cut and you press up into the corner, you can squish your corner like I did at the beginning there. It got a little squished, but that's okay. I think I'll figure out how to fix that up a bit with my scissors here. There we go. Okay, so now I have my two pieces that I cut off. And so one is the way I want it to be, so it's showing a nice amount of color. The other one is going to flip, and it will be the other side, like that. Cool, right? I think that's very cool. And I'm going to choose to layer it this way so that I have a lot of this orange. I like the orange showing on this particular one. My other samples didn't have a lot of orange, so this is going to be fun. It's showing a lot of the orange color. Okay, so these are going to glue to our card base. If you have any hairs like this from your cutting blade, it's probably a good indicator that your blade is getting dull. It's time to, you can try sharpening it by cutting through tin foil. Sometimes that helps and it gives it a little more life, a little longer. But sometimes it's just time to change the blade. So I'm just trimming off those little hairs to give myself a cleaner cut. And if you get a bit of a like burr kind of from your cutting blade, then you can flatten that burr out with a bone folder, and then again just trim some of those little hairs away. My cutter appears to need to have the blade replaced. It is time. That's good. Okay. So then I can glue those down. And when you glue these down, you'll have a bit of a border of the Smoky Slate card base. All around the outside. And of course, if you don't want a border, then you would cut that piece of designer series paper, you would cut it bigger. So mine was 4 by 5 1/4. If you wanted it to fit the full size, you would have it 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So that it would match up with the size of your card base. I love this paper so much. It's so pretty. Oh, and see, I needed my Tombow liquid glue. I put that on crooked. Thank you, Tombow. Done, done, done. Okay, so there's my cross pieces. Before we adhere those to be closed, we're going to add a piece of designer series paper. This is new paper. So this was in my pre-order. Yay! So exciting to be able to order stuff before it's available to customers. This will be available August 1st for you to purchase. It is, and I can't remember what it's called. Anyways, it's new. It's piece something or peaceful something. I'll have to look it up. I'll write it in the details in the description for this video, and then you'll be able to know what it's called, because offhand it's not coming to mind. So this we're going to attach, and it measures 2 inches by 5 3/8 because we want it to just be up here in the middle top of our card, because that's the part that's going to show in behind our little pocket piece. And it's nice because we don't need to use a full piece. We can use the other, save it for other projects because it's so pretty. And you will get, there's a tiny little triangle of where this designer series paper isn't covering what's the Smoky Slate in the background. That's okay, because of course that's where our label will go. Okay, this is where this is where tear and tape comes in handy. It's lickety split, super quick to glue these crossed sections down. So I'm putting tear and tape on both sides of our crisscross card. And I can trim the little edges on the little excess that's hanging over the edge here. And then peel off our backings. Easier said than done. I always have a hard time grabbing my backings. There we go. Well, that doesn't usually happen. My backing tore on me. There we go. Okay, now before I glue that down, I want to double check which side's going down first. So I'm putting down my left side first. You may or may not want to do the other side. Depends on your pattern paper and how it looks. There. Look at that. That part's done. So easy. So quick and easy. Okay, what is next? Well, let me tell you. I've got a whole envelope full of goodies here that I'm going to be using. All right, so we have, let's do our insert next, actually. So for the insert, that's going to go in our pocket. We have a few elements here that we're going to use. So here I have another piece of that beautiful winter paper. And then I have a piece of basic white cardstock. This measures 3 1/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. And I am going to use my detailed trio punch to use the corner rounder to corner or round my corners. All 4 corners. And then I'm going to do the same with this smaller piece of gray designer series paper. This one's a little, you got to really make sure that you're in there right. If you get it in wrong, it won't round that corner very nicely. And sometimes it just, I'm not feeling it, which I'm not right now. What is happening? Something's in the way, maybe. Let's try this way. There we go. Okay, so those pieces are important, but I'm not going to attach those yet because I want to stamp my background. So if you have any kind of floral stamps or leaves, anything like that would look really pretty with this. I'm going to use Smoky Slate with this stamp from the Forever Fern stamp set, which I thought I had beside me. Oh, here it is. So this one, the Forever Fern stamp set. So we're actually using this stamp and we're going to use this sentiment on the inside as well. So depending on what floral stamps you have, you might want to do your sentiment first and then work around the sentiment, just because sometimes we want to fill in all the space and then you realize, oh, there's no room for my sentiment now. So let's take a moment and take my own advice, and I'll do my sentiment first. So I'm using Blushing Bride ink. It's not a perfect match with this paper, but it really works. I feel like it's kind of works in the middle, if you know what I mean. Like it's kind of a blending of multiple colors on this card, which works nicely. So this is To a Friend That Makes Me Smile with Blushing Bride ink. I'm going to lay this down so I have an idea of position. And I'm going to stamp that. I don't want it too high. And I want it straight. It's hard to make things straight when I'm using a camera over top of everything here. So I'm going to go, I think, right there. Hopefully that's straight. Then I don't need that anymore. That was just a guide, so I wasn't too low. And you want to be low enough that when you put this in your card, that it will hide behind your label. Let's do a better, here's my finished one. If I put it in, it hides behind the label. Unless you want it to show on purpose. Like I've seen cards like this where the sentiment is up here and it shows on purpose, which is cute too. Okay, so then we want to stamp our floral images. And in this case, leaf, our foliage. I'm just going to use a little scrap piece of paper that clearly I have been using a lot of lately. It just keeps my background paper nice and clean for my videos. So Smoky Slate ink, and I am going to stamp this a few times. So I'm going to do one quite high. Then I am going to do one, whoops, kind of to the side like this. I'm going to do another one over here. I'm just kind of filling in the space a little bit. And then lastly, I'm going to put one, just have a branch kind of coming over the corner here a little bit. How do I want that? Maybe like that. So cute. Then I can attach my papers. So again, we have our patterned paper. Then we have a piece of gold foil. This is just 3/8 of an inch by 4 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to attach that to the back of my patterned paper so I can have a nice little edge of gold showing. So I'll use my liquid Tombow glue just along this edge on the back side of my designer series paper. And then it will be easy for me to be able to get that lined up and straight with my gold foil. Oops. Like that. So I just want like an 1/8 of an inch showing. Got a little smudge of glue there. It's hard to get those little glue smudges off of foil, but I think it's okay. And if you have any little edge bits poking out the side, you can trim those off. I just have a little bit on this side, not too much. It's almost not worth bothering to trim. Then that can attach to the bottom of my pocket insert. Making sure that it's all flush, lined up. Which is always harder to do with my camera than it is on my own time. There we go. So the last thing for our little pocket insert that I want to add is the little, it's kind of like a little tab to grab onto. So this is Pale Papaya. We can fold that in half on my little score line. So if you want measurements, this is 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch, and it's scored at whatever half of that is. 3/8 of an inch is what half would be. So that's going to attach on both sides like a little tab. So we can just put glue on both sides of this. And attach it. So it's about, I don't know, half of it is on the cardstock and half of it is off the cardstock, like that. It just kind of helps people to see that there's something to pull out of that card. Plus it looks cute, and this color will kind of balance the other orange that's on your paper. See that? Lovely. So that goes in there, like that. Then we can decorate the front of our card. So we have a few things to do that with. We have these pieces here. These are cut using the Stitch So Sweetly dies. So these are 2 of the labels from that set. This one is Polished Pink, which goes really nicely with the pink in our paper. And then this one, of course, is Basic White. So we can stamp our sentiment on this Basic White piece, and I have chosen to use Pale Papaya ink with the large birthday sentiment from the Biggest Wish stamp set, which I love. I love these large sentiments and the bold letters mixed with the script letters. I think it looks really cool. And this birthday sentiment fits perfectly in this little label here. So stamp that guy in the middle, whatever sentiment you're using. And if you don't have Pale Papaya, well, you should get Pale Papaya. If you don't have it, you should get it. But if you don't have it, black would work really well. Just whatever sentiment you're using, black would just be nice and crisp and work nicely. And gray would work nicely. And of course, the Blushing Bride would work well. And I think even Melon Mambo would even work. But if you're doing the 2 stamp layering like I am, you want the birthday sentiment to be a lighter colored ink so that your black ink over top will show up really well. Which means I need to grab my black ink, which is somewhere. Here it is, underneath my other card. There we go. So Memento Tuxedo Black, Tuxedo Memento Black, I don't know. No, Tuxedo Black Memento ink. That sounds right. And I need my stamp. Oh my goodness, where is it? I thought it was out here, but maybe I put it away because sometimes I throw myself off and I by putting things away. Nope, it's not put away. That means I have to hunt for it. It's probably on a block, which means it's probably beside me here somewhere. There we go. So this is the Happy, of course, from the same stamp set as the birthday. So that one I'm stamping right in the middle, and I find it easiest for lining it up if I look at the A and the P's, because the H and the Y are scripty, and so they're not level with each other or with the A's and the P's. So it's harder if I focus on the A's and the P's, it's easier to line that up and make sure it's straight. Oh, it looks so cute. I just love this look. It's awesome. Okay, so then we can start layering things together. So I am going to put my sample over here so we can use it as a reference for our layering. So first we're layering that we just stamped on top of our polished pink so that we can use dimensionals. Don't stick them down that way. That's not what I wanted to do. And these dies layer perfectly with each other. I love this. They're so cool how they are meant to be layered on top of each other. Okay, before I glue those down, I want to grab my glue dots and my other little elements. So I have this silver trim from the catalog. So it comes in a pack of silver and gold trim. So we're going to use the silver one. And then we have gold, this gold foil die cut Forever Flourishing leaf die. The Forever Flourishing dies are meant to coordinate with the Forever Fern stamp set. So that's what that's from. So this fancy thing here, we need to pull apart so that we can end up with these cool little kind of tinsely looking accents on our card. So we start by just pulling at whatever thread we get a hold of, and slowly, oh, we've got the white bit that's in this inside. We can pull that out. That's just the middle, so it's easy to just pull that fully out. And then we want to separate all of these tinsely bits. And be patient when you do this. You don't want to pull too hard and cause them to stretch and misshape. So I kind of pull it a little bit out and then kind of work it along the strand, the full strand. Usually the first one is a little harder to get out. And then it's easier after that. There's one. So we're going to pull all of them apart, all of them out until there's nothing left to pull out. You can see how I'm just being really patient and taking my time. And this was just a 6-inch length. So these pieces are going to, you know, go a long way considering it's only 6 inches of this silver trim. Well, I think I'm pulling out 2 pieces at the same time. That's okay. So just stack them together like you're stacking sticks as you pull the rest out. And normally, I have to say too, normally I don't mix gold and silver together. You'll notice, of course, I have the gold accents in the paper and the gold foil. But the reason I'm using this silver with this is because I have the Smoky Slate card base. And so this really, it kind of pulls it all together. I feel like having a little bit of silver, we can get away with that on this card because of the Smoky Slate color. Okay, so that's all of my little bits pulled out. So I'm going to have that all attached to the back side of my label. So if I flip my label over, I can put a glue dot smack dab in the middle. And then I can just lay my stack of sticks on there, also at an angle. Right? How cute is that? So cute. And then when I turn it over, you've got these tinsely bits coming out both directions there. And then we have this piece. This one we're going to cut off some of it so that we can have some on the bottom right of our label and some on the top left of our label. So I'm going to cut it. I think I'm going to cut it here. No, I'm going to cut it here. I never remember what I do. Every time I'm like, what did I do last time? I don't know. So it's going to look like that when that piece is cut. And then this piece is going to look a little funky. Like that. So then we have two pieces to play with and have only die cut it once, which makes me very happy. So we're going to use glue dots to attach those to our card. Or to our label, I should say. So this one, I'll put the glue dot kind of low on the stem. And that's going to attach over top of our fronds, or our, not fronds, what do you want to call these? I don't know, but that's where it's going to go. Like that. And then this guy, he's going to go on the other side. He's going to go kind of like that. I think it'll be easier for me to kind of flip this over. Hold your tinsely bits out of the way, because otherwise they're going to be kind of in the way. And then we can, I don't know, stick that down. Kind of like that. That looks pretty good. And then we're ready to attach that to our card base. So we're going to use dimensionals. And we only want to put dimensionals on this section of our label, right? Because we don't want to attach anything to our little insert. So our dimensionals will go to the side and to the bottom of our label. And sometimes it's good as well to cover up any, like I have a glue dot there, so I'm going to use a dimensional to cover up that glue dot. Make sure that my glue dots don't stick unless I want them to stick, if you know what I mean. So those were my glue dots, those 3. And then the rest I can just go for it here. So I've got them mostly on the bottom. Peel off my backings. And then pop that on. And I have it so that I can look at those diagonals and use them as a guide to make sure that I am straight. And if I want it higher, like if I have more to cover here, if I want to cover more of my sentiment, I can have this a bit higher. So it just depends on your layout and what's working for you. So I'm gonna go, I think, I don't know, about there. That feels right. Like that. Cute. And lastly, we have some little accents to put on. These are elegant faceted gems, and I have cut mine out of my package, so I've used up all of this particular, the white ones I guess they are, but in the package you can see there are some champagne kind of colored ones and then clear ones too. I always like clear ones because they can be used for so many cards. So I'm just going to put one up here, one down here, and one over here. Oops. Like so. And then we have a completed card. Oh, and you know what? My little tinsely bits are sticking out the side quite a bit. So I'll just trim those off as my final thing to do is to trim those, just to make them not quite as wild and crazy. A little wild and crazy is okay, but you don't want it to be too wild and crazy. You don't want to scare people away. So there we go. That is my version of a Criss Cross pocket card that stands to be able to be displayed and shows off that beautiful Expressions in Ink Designer Series paper from Stampin' Up.